Good day, learners. This lesson will be your third quarter in week 5 and 6 in ICT 9 Computer Hardware Servicing. Before we will proceed to another slide, I have here a video. Please watch carefully. What can you say about the video? Who can guess what is our topic for today? Yes, it's all about installation of hardware components and other peripherals. The objectives for today's lesson: first, to have explained personal computer disassembly and assembly, and lastly, demonstrate connecting peripherals of a personal computer. Before starting computer disassembly, make sure that the tools needed are available and all close by and handy, and be sure to have a container to keep the screws in when you want to put things back together. Step 1. Unplugging. The first thing you do is to unplug every cable that is plugged into your computer. That includes cables such as power, USB, mouse, keyboard, Ethernet, modem, AM or FM antenna, cable TV, etc. Just unplug all the cables for safety purposes. Step 2. Opening the outer shell or case. First, unscrew the 4 screws at the back of the computer. On most computer cases, there will be a large knob that you can unscrew by hand or by screwdriver on the back right side of the computer. The left side has a small screws because on that side you can't access much on the inside. As you can see the picture below. Once the screws are removed, you can remove the side panels. On most computers, they just slide off. Start with the left side panel, the side that once had the knobs. Slide it towards the back of the computer. Now, you can remove the left panel. Just like the other side, slide it towards the back of the computer, as you can see the picture below. Notice, if we are working on a carpet, about every 5 minutes, touch something that is grounded, zinc faucet pipe, the wire coming from the ground, part of a wall outlet. This is done so you do not shock your motherboard or other parts. Step 3. Removing the system fan. First, unplug the fan from the motherboard. You can find the plug by following the wire from the fan. It should be labeled. Next, you will have to unscrew the fan from the outside. You should now be available to lift the fan out of the PC, as you can see the picture below. Step 5. Power supply. The first thing to do is unplug every wire coming from the power supply. You must disconnect the motherboard, very large connector or plug, CD/DVD drivers, power, internal hard drive, power, and portable hard drive slot power. Once everything is unplugged, unscrew the 4 screws holding the power supply in place on the back of the computer. Next, push the power supply from the outside and then lift it out, as you can see the picture below. Step 6. CD/DVD drivers. First, unplug the ribbon from the back of the drive. Once that is complete, pull the tab securing the drive is placed. Then, push it out from the inside, as you can see the picture below. Step 7. Hard drive. First, unplug the connector at the back of the slot and unplug the other end from the motherboard. Also unplug the SATA cable from the motherboard and the hard drive. The portable hard drive slot is secured the same way the CD/DVD drive is, with a tab. Pull on the tab, then slide the slot out, as you can see the picture below. To remove the hard drive from the side of the slot, unscrew the 4 screws securing it in place. You must be very careful not to drop the hard drive since it is very delicate, as you can see the picture below. Step 8. Memory Rom. To remove the RAM, push down on both tabs holding the RAM in place, which are located at both ends of the RAM, as you can see the pictures below. Step 9. Motherboard. The motherboard has 7 screws holding it to the frame, which are indicated by large white circles around them. Remove them and then lift the motherboard out of the frame, as you can see in the picture below. Personal computer assembly. The first step, prepare your workplace. Take inventory. Before you start, take an inventory of your parts. Do not begin assembling your computer if you don't have everything you need. Begin the step-by-step process once you are ready with everything you need, as you can see the picture below. Make space, make time. Building a PC takes up space, about a dining room table worth. So make sure you have a plenty of working room and a few hours to proceed with minimal interruption. Work on a flat, stable tabletop surface or bare floor where you have room to lay out all the items. Prepare grounding protection. Use an expensive anti-static wrist strap. Make sure you are wearing your anti-static wrist strap correctly. It does you no good at all if you do not wear it. And you are ready to proceed. Next, have the drivers ready. Assuming you have another internet-connected PC, download the latest drivers from the vendor's websites for each component you will be installing. Sometimes drivers are updated between the time the component was manufactured and the time are installing it. It is always best to have the latest. Copy them to a CD for easy access. Step 2. Prepare the motherboard. Great care should be taken when installing the motherboard. First, take the board out of its packaging and put it on top of the anti-static bag it came in. Remember, you always want to safeguard your components from potentially hazardous static electricity where you're strapped, as you can see the pictures below. Before you secure the motherboard into the PC case or chassis, inspect it carefully for any visible defects. Next, review the motherboard manual to make sure you are familiar with the motherboard layout and understand which socket is which. Manuals are extremely helpful, usually easy to read, and include illustration. Below you can find instructions on how to install the processor, the heatsink, and the memory modules on the motherboard. You should not place the motherboard in the computer case until you are told to do so. 3. Install the CPU. Use the unlocking mechanism to open the CPU socket, which is usually lever. Then, carefully line up the pins and place the chip in each socket. It will fit only when oriented the proper way. An arrow or a missing pin on one corner of the chip will show you how to line things up. Align triangular CPU and socket K marks and lower the lever to lock the CPU into place. Step 4. Install the CPU heatsink. First, you have to follow the manufacturer's direction to install the heatsink and the fan that will cool the processor. If you bought an OM CPU and a separate heatsink, you may need to spread a thin layer of the thermal grease that came with the heatsink over the chip to ensure proper transfer of heat. Some heatsinks came with this grease already applied. Then attach the clip that holds the heatsink in place, keeping in mind that it may require a fair amount of force. Again, follow the instructions that came with the heatsink. They will show you how to fit it correctly. If you are in doubt, you can visit the manufacturer's website for more information. Plug the CPU punch power connector into the proper connector on the motherboard, as you can see the picture below. Step 5. Installing Memory Rom modules. In order to install the memory modules, insert them into a proper socket and push down firmly but evenly until the clips of both sides of the socket pop into place. If your motherboard supports dual-channel memory, consult the user manual to determine which pairs of RAM sockets you should use. The motherboard and the CPU are the brain and nerve center of your PC, so selecting these components is the most important decision you'll make, as you can see the picture below. Step 6. Place the motherboard into the case. Some PC cases have a removable motherboard tray. If yours does, remove the screws holding it in place and pull it out of the case. Note the pattern of the holes in your motherboard and screw brass stand-ups into the motherboard tray or into the PC case in the correct location. Always check the manual and follow their instruction to the letter. Next, check the layout of the sockets on the motherboard and confirm that the ports on your motherboard's back panel match the hole on the case's input-output shield that is installed in your case. If necessary, remove the old shield by tapping it firmly a few times with the butt end of a screwdriver, and then replace it with the shield that came with the new motherboard. Next, carefully position the motherboard on top of the brass stand-ups. Line up all the holes and use the screws that accompanied the case of fasten down the motherboard. If you are using a removable tray in your system, slide the tray and motherboard back into the case and then secure the tray, as you can see in the pictures below. Step 7. Connect the power supply. First, making the proper connection is crucial to successfully assemble your PC system. Fortunately, manufacturers provide color-coded power cables and unique connector shapes to make the job easy. First, plug the large ATX power connector from your power supply into the matching port on your motherboard. Next, locate the smaller, square processor power connector. You cannot miss it. It is the one spouting the yellow and black wires, and attach it to the motherboard. Note, your connector is usually located near the processor. As always, refer to your motherboard's manual for the exact location. Use your motherboard user manual and find the description about front panel connectors, as you can see in the pictures below. Note, you are going to be doing work that requires attention to detail and can be quite frustrating if you do not go into with the right attitude. Attach each of the tiny leads from the power and reset switches, the hard disk activity lights, the PC speaker, and any front panel USB and firewire ports to the corresponding pin in your motherboard. The needle nose pliers are useful for manipulating small pieces. Step 8. Install graphics video cards. First, begin by removing the backplane cover from the AGP or PCI Express X16 slot, the metal piece where the monitor connector will emerge, as you can see the picture below. Install the graphics board in that slot and then secure the card with a screw, as you can see the picture below. Next, step 9. Install internal drives. Make any necessary changes to jumpers on the drives before mounting them in a case. A 2-drive system, 1 or 2 SATA serial ATA is a standard hardware interface for connecting hard drive and CD/DVD drives to a computer. Hard drives plus 1 parallel ATA advanced technology attachment. Optical drive, for example, is easy to set up. The SATA drives are jumperless, and the optical drive can be set as master on its own parallel ATA channel. Many cases have removable drive wheels or cages to house drivers. Next, use the included screws to attach your drives to the wheels or cage and slide them into the case. For externally accessible drivers, such as a DVD recorder, you can save time by installing one drive reel and sliding the drive in for a test fitting to make sure that its front is flush with the case. And when the drives are installed, connect power and SATA cable to each one. Parallel ATA drive use wide flat data cables that can be installed only in the correct way. Floppy drives use a similar but smaller cable. SATA drives use a thin, 1 cm wide data cable. SATA drivers use a new type of power connector that many power supplies don't come with. Fortunately, many motherboards ship with adapters for converting a standard 4-pin power connector to SATA power connector, as you can see the pictures below. Step 10. Install the add-in cards. For each add-in card, you must choose a free PCI slot. Remove its backplane cover to allow access from the rear of the case. Carefully position the card above the slot and press down firmly to set the card. Secure the card with a screw, as you can see the pictures below. Many motherboards have additional sound connectors or ports housed on small add-in boards. Some of these plugs into slots on the motherboard, others screws into the back of the case in place of slot covers. Usually, the additional ports are not essential to your PC's operation. For example, if you install a sound card, you do not need connectors to the motherboard's built-in sound chip. Check your motherboard manual to determine what each of these board does. Next, let's proceed to connecting peripherals of a personal computer. When attaching hardware and peripherals of the computer, ensure that they are connected to the correct collocation or ports. For example, some mouse and keyboard cables use the same type of PS2 connector, so you must know first the different ports that can be found in the back panel of the computer. Step in connecting peripherals of PC. The first step, attach the monitor cable to the video port. Second, secure the cable by tightening the screws on the connector. Third, plug the keyboard cable into the PC2 keyboard port. Then, plug the mouse cable into the PC2 mouse port. Next, plug the USB cable into a USB port. Plug the network cable into the network port. And last but not the least, step 7. Plug the power cable into the power supply. As you can see, the pictures below. Okay, that's all for today. If you have any questions, clarifications, you can contact my cell phone number 0905 1571448. For your activity and test, just visit our GAITF link, gaitf.sims.school/lcms. Thank you for listening. And once again, good morning.